A Bengali vampire falls in love with a nervous dentist who faints at the sight of blood. Now tell me that isn't a glorious one-liner that you don't just want to sink your teeth into. Netflix India's latest original series, Toothpari, gives us an unlikely love story set in a world of monsters and magic, or more specifically, vampires and witches.
Promise कि तुम कभी किसी को wait नहीं करोगे.
I promise.
The eager world building from writer-director Protim Das Gupta introduces us to a Calcutta where vampires secretly live amongst humans, or more specifically, they live underground, where they're given everything they need by their domineering human handler, AD, played by the always impressive Adil Hussain, here supported by the wiggiest wig in all the land. This clan of vampires is forbidden from going up to the surface, but of course, what are rules if not meant to be broken? The clan's youngest member, Rumi, played with an assertive charm by the wonderful Tanya Maniktala, is the vampire who sneaks out every night to prey on adulterous men and drink their blood. On one such evening of Rumi being on the prowl for horny men who are themselves on the prowl, things go wrong and she breaks her tooth, for which she must seek out a dentist. Enter anxious orthodontist Doc Roy, played by a lovable Shantanu Maheshwari, armed with a delightful nervous puppy energy. The two meet and unlikely interspecies sparks fly in a mostly comfortable, surprisingly breezy love story. It's a sweet premise, but it did make me wonder, what are the other rules of this universe? If vampires need dentists, do werewolves need waxing parlor aunties? Do zombies need a facial? Do churels need a pedicure, but like a reverse backward pedicure? No, back to the thing? Okay. We rarely get to see fantasy worlds like this brought to life in Hindi cinema, and early on, Toothpari not only offers a refreshing quirky tonality of gothic romance and oddball humor, it also has what we rarely get to see on streaming: real imagination. Whether it's the rules of how these vampires operate, what their abilities are, or even envisioning what their underground lair looks like, with production designer Saini S. Chore clearly having a blast, creating classy caverns made up of libraries, sleeping pods, arcades, and even a blood bar. I also liked how distinctly Indian this fantasy world feels. The Calcutta setting and Bengali characters are soaked into the DNA and lore of the show, rather than feeling like yet another generic Hollywood template dragged and dropped here. For lack of a better word, these vampires feel like they belong to Calcutta. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say. But it's not all butterflies and meet cutes on offer here. The mystery thriller half of the show brings the stakes, pun not intended. For one, Rumi and her clan must be wary of a dreaded 50-year-old organization of vampire hunters. An organization called, wait for it, the Katmundus. Get it? Katmundu? Love it. The group is led by a creepy witch lady, Luna Luka, played by Revati. Once they get wind of vampires plodding around town again after all these years, the Katmundus must get the band back together again. Except the band is now an elderly bunch of retirees and grandparents. I don't know of any other Indian streaming series in which most of the supporting cast is made up of older actors, and it's pretty wonderful. Out to guide Rumi on her vampiric journey are her two surrogate parent-like figures. David, played by Shashwato Chatterjee, and Meera, played by Tilottama Shom. Two actors who continue to make everything they're a part of instantly better. Here, playing immortal beings who are hundreds of years old. I kinda wish I was a fly on the wall during that meeting, where this story was pitched to these actors of that caliber. In my head, it went something like, okay, so the two of you play, like wise guiding lights to our young female protagonist and are essential to the journey of this story. And, you're also immortal vampires who live in a basement. Also on the scene is Sub-Inspector Kartik Pal, played by the always sincere Sikandar Kher, who gradually starts to uncover this hidden world and its secrets. Sikandar's a talented actor who's clearly having a bit of a moment right now. But after a point, this show doesn't seem to know what to do with his character. It's partly because Toothpari's sweet, wholesome, small eventually gets drowned out by its bloated world-building big. The increasingly busy, overcooked plot, which involves age-old grudges, past lives, mystical forces, evil pharmaceutical companies, police investigations, and beyond, risks crushing the show's gentle, pleasant essence, to the extent that it starts to feel like two different shows: the unlikely love story and the generic good versus evil fantasy fable. It's why the show doesn't quite earn its 8-episode length. The final episode in particular takes a page out of the Marvel movie handbook and becomes a blurry glut of CGI fights rooted in empty revelations and coincidences. Action takes center stage. Feeling becomes a footnote, and the series gets lost in its own imagination. Still, even though it feels like a faint memory by the end, if you zoom all the way out of the bumps, bruises, and overly convenient, convoluted character arcs along the way, what I'll take away from this show is its charm, quirk, and sincere attempt at wanting to do something different. At its best, this is a show where, within a universe of decapitation and vampires and blood-sucking, the greatest obstacle was pushy Indian parents pressurizing their son to get married. Like that, rather than all the heavy mystery thrillerness it gets lost in, Tooth Fairy has the most bite when, ironically, these vampires lean into the light. You can watch Tooth Fairy on Netflix.